Hi, I'm Nadia Dunn. CCL TV are delighted to be here at the TFS Summit in Dubai. And joining me today is Jabir from Alpha Cargo Services. Jabir, thank you so much for being here. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me, Nadia.
How was your journey over here?
Pretty good. It's a route I often take, so yeah, just doing what I normally do.
And well, tell us about your background, actually. What do you normally do? What does Alpha Cargo Services do?
So Alpha Cargo Services came into life in 2000. So we're 21 years old. We focus primarily on air freight. We're a Saudi civil aviation regulated agent, the cargo GSA of Malaysian Airlines in Saudi Arabia. We've got a couple of offices in Saudi Arabia and an office here in Dubai. We're also part of IATA and IATA's Interactive Cargo Task Force. So we'd like to think that we'd like to see more transformation happen, and that's one of the keys as to how I actually came back to Saudi Arabia. Personally speaking, I was born in India to parents who opted for the expat life in the Middle East. Dad started working in cargo in 1982, a few months after I was born, so I'd like to think I'm the lucky charm,
Yeah.
if I may. But essentially grew up in the Middle East, in Saudi Arabia to be precise, after a formal qualification in computer engineering from India and brief work experience there. Did my MBA at the University of London. Was blessed with the opportunity to work for one of London's fastest growing digital marketing agencies, which is also incidentally one of Google's top 5 customers in EMEA. Yeah. So, and then moved into consulting after that. To work on bigger problems, ideally. And after a stint consulting for some well-known brands such as Shell and Skype across diverse industries, I answered the calling to come back into the world of freight a few years ago, and here I am.
It's always pulling you back.
Indeed, as in I think we'd like to push things forward most of the time, but the pull generally is, can we infuse more transformation? Yeah. And coincidentally, a few years ago, since Saudi Arabia announced the strategic transformation program of Vision 2030, that was interesting timing, since the infusion of more technology into logistics is something that industry bodies such as IATA and other bodies always say we've been left behind on. But now, well, interestingly, thanks to the pandemic, you've got an acceleration in terms of more adoption of digital measures. Yeah.
And tell us about the pandemic. How has that affected your company?
I think the pandemic initially instilled that grip of fear across people, which caused a lot of stalling, if I may use that term. In terms of how things could move, whether we could move, whether we were well protected, or we could have a cure or some sort of vaccination. So it was interesting for us, especially in Saudi Arabia, because early in 2020, we actually got to see a lot of Chinese volunteers kick into action, where our premises had Chinese volunteers come in from all parts of Saudi Arabia to try and see if they could find enough masks, because while Wuhan was suffering, the Chinese expats in Saudi Arabia came together to see what they could collect. So they collected about 100 tons of face masks.
Wow.
However, they didn't end up getting transported because I think the Middle East region was always prudent in terms of trying to see how it could ward off scenarios. And but I mean, we stayed operational throughout the course of the pandemic because, as a regulated agent and as GSA of a large airline, take our responsibility seriously enough. And I think the problem has always been the uncertainty that it's caused. For instance, if you like, in terms of the spike in prices or the availability of equipment or space in general. And I mean, I think it's still uncertain as to how we're going to finish the year. Because in terms of the dip that we took or witnessed last year, we're definitely seeing an uptick now, allowing us to have a little more confidence in terms of what sort of growth plans we could now resume pursuing.
And everyone's looking towards 2022 as hoping that it will be brighter, that things are slowly getting back to normal. So 2022, hopefully we'll have more growth plans. And for your company as well, what do those mean?
So absolutely, as in couldn't agree more about the hope that we have. But I guess we're still kind of hinging ourselves on how vaccination rates spike, because, for instance, like over here in Dubai, it's been at a very good pace, and so has the case been in Saudi Arabia, with only double-digit new cases being reported. So on that basis, 2022 looks more promising. We also were launch partners for a Saudi civil aviation program called IAB, which was an extension of a service that we always referred to as city check-in.
Right.
The service essentially focused in allowing people, or allowing airlines, to have a different relationship with us. As forwarders, we're generally customers of the airline, but when we have the city check-in program, the airline's our customer.
Yeah.
So the intent is to allow airlines to allow their aircrafts to take off on time after the Hajj pilgrimage.
Right.
Because the 2 million people that come into Saudi Arabia, 50% generally come in from overseas, and to ensure the pilgrims are taken well looked after, Saudi Arabia's king always ensures that he reminds us the pilgrims are guests of God, not just my guests, but the guests of God. So during that period, we have this program, this project of city check-in. We go to the pilgrims' hotels or accommodation and check in pilgrims by flight, the bags that is, and allowing them to actually travel to the airport without carrying their luggage.
Wow, that's a huge
It is.
feat.
It absolutely is, and it's, well, it keeps us, we've got 24/7 operations during that period.
I bet.
And it's nerve-wracking, but it's a lot of fun at the same time.
Yeah, I bet. And Jabir, what are your thoughts about CCL TV being here at the conference?
Well, I've been to a couple of conferences, generally go to the IATA events that happen across the world. This is a first, and it's quite interesting in terms of how you're going about things, and I'm sure you have a lot of interesting conversations these days.
We do. We've heard some really interesting stuff, and obviously your points as well. It's really interesting to speak to you today, so thanks for taking the time to come and see us.
Thank you for making time for me.